My name's Nick, I run a successful home maintenance company and I'm here to show you some DIY tricks. In this video I'm going to show you the basics of how to build a partition wall. Firstly, we need to decide the exact location of the partition wall and in particular what room it's going into. For the DIY enthusiast, this is probably important in terms of maybe splitting up a large room, maybe making it into 2 bedrooms. The basic principles are building a wall that will separate 2 areas with or without a door or an archway. The tools really that we're going to need, very importantly, it will be a spirit level, a drill, hammer, saw and obviously some timber materials. There's 2 kinds of ways of building a stud wall, either by using 3-inch timber or 4-inch timber. Using 4-inch timber is far stronger and it's a much better product and it'll give you a much more rigid wall. So for the purposes of showing you how to do this in this studio environment, I'm going to refer to my existing built stud wall which is behind me, which is a smaller version of what effectively we are going to build. The basic principles really are you need to take your dimensions from the area of where you need to build your stud wall, construct a ceiling plate and a floor plate, put the ceiling plate up first and then literally starting in the corner of your wall, put your first upright and then centre your studs every 400, which makes it easier to take any sheet materials like plasterboard when you get round to that aspect. Once your ceiling plate is up, that would be your starting point. You need to mark it on the ceiling. Let's imagine this is the ceiling plate. This would then go up onto the ceiling. You'd then square down onto the floor and create a sole plate. Once that's done, you then put your studs as shown here, but keeping them 400 apart, because then, like I say, when the sheet material goes on, you'll have a much better option and less wastage. So the principles of creating a stud wall are making sure that your top plate and your bottom plate are dead square level. Once they're level from one side to the other, these then just slot in and are either nailed or screwed. The most important thing about making any stud work is to make sure that all your ends are dead square. The easiest way to do that is either with the back of a saw or a square edge. We square it off using the square, and a good trick is to come all the way around. So go all around your 4 sides. And then, if your saw starts to waver off any of these lines as you're coming round, see that then perfectly lines up all the way around. Once you start making your saw cut, just check. If you're not very confident, just keep checking. So you're getting a dead square line. If you start to waver off the line, you can then start over and come in at a little bit of an angle to correct yourself. But as I say, the most important part is making sure all these joints are dead straight, because otherwise you'll end up with that. Once the studs are then cut to suit, you then literally offer them up. This would be on the ceiling perhaps. You'd offer them up and then it's a simple case, I'm going to do it in the reverse, of either nailing them up with 3 or 4 inch wire nails in at an angle, or if you can, screw them, which is obviously easier and slightly quicker. So I've marked this one on here. I'm going to offer the stud up, centre it up, and there we have our first stud. So once we've got this stud in its position, effectively all we're then going to do is mark our 400 centres all the way through. So our next centre of our stud will be here. And then we just repeat the process. If this is on either the horizontal or the vertical, our next stud stands up here, and then this side, making sure every stud is 400 centre apart. And by centre I mean this being the centre here, our next stud is dead on the centre here. So when we put our plasterboard on, we line up with everything. The key to building stud work is don't worry about too many studs. it's worrying about too few studs. So if you get to a door and there's only 300, don't worry, because you'll end up doing a cut on the plasterboard or the sheet material. So once you've got to a stage like so and your studs are all fixed, you'll effectively end up with something that looks a little bit like this, which is a number of studs all dotted along the distance of your room. Now, you'll have had to fix the ceiling plate in position when this first went up to stop it obviously falling down, but the floor plate you can either secure very temporarily with a couple of nails or screw it just in case that you need to move a tiny bit of movement, and it sometimes helps to have a little bit of flexibility just in case it's not dead plumb. When you put the straight edge on it at the last knocking, there's a little bit of movement and you can just kick this out. The good thing about buying graded timber is everything will be the same size and it will line up as long as the basics have been followed, which is to make the ceiling plate dead plumb with the fork or the sole plate on the bottom. Once it's all in position and you're happy with the position of your stud wall, then just give a couple of final fixings through into either the floor and the ceiling, just taking particular attention to obviously what could be under the floor, pipes, electrics, etc, etc. Sometimes it's worth just lifting the floorboard. And that is the basics of making a partition wall.